I don't know.
Yes.
Is he listening?
Andrew, are we
You're
live?
ready to go, Judge. Anytime you're ready.
This is the Franklin County Fiscal Court Special Work Session. Our guest today is Ms. Ross from
Harp Enterprises.
Harp Enterprises and Jeff Hancock, and we're going to be talking about voting machines and voting precincts. So we'll turn this morning's session over to you, Mr. Hancock, and lead us in this time discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Judge. I first want to say it is a pleasure to be back in this room with you guys.
Pleasure to be in this room.
Yeah, I've missed seeing everybody. And as you know, from 2020, our election processes have changed. We've been dealt a hand that is going to allow us to better serve the citizens. And the only way we can better serve the citizens in Franklin County is to be prepared. And to be prepared with what we feel like is the best option. We also have Russ Wright, which is one of our members of our Franklin County Board of Elections. He's with us today. He's worked hard on this election process. He's been to meetings and he's made sure that we're all trying to represent everybody in Franklin County. I want to start by looking at some maps. If you start over on this side, and I think Andrew has my map section with me, but if you start, well, that ain't gonna work. If you start with the middle map right there, what I've done in the first portion of this middle map is just to show coverage. And everybody has in front of them the agenda. It's got all your precinct locations on it. It's got everything that we need to do to have a successful election. But it also has costs that will be associated to you guys. And the difference from a 19 election, which was the last normal election we had, as we knew at 37 locations with 44 different precincts, and what we're looking to go to now, which is a total of 10 precincts. Instead of 37 locations, we would go to 10 precincts. We would have 3 days of early voting, which is what the Election Bill 574 is allowed for. And then we would have mail-in voting that would be allowed to start up to 45 days before the election process. With that all being said, I'm going to go back to that middle map. During the last primary and general for 2020, if you'll look, we had no coverage in the northern part of the county. Absolutely zero coverage. If you look into what is Lambert's district, which covers Bald Knob and St. John's, and then you look at the Schweitzer district, which is in Scotty Tracy's district, you had zero coverage in the northern part of the county. I want to go back to having coverage in the northern part of the county. And I also want to add, I just got confirmation that we are allowed to do this. I want to put a second vote center in for the entirety of the early voting. Now, after thinking and putting together the thoughts and process of this, that would go, in my opinion, the best location for this would be Capital City Christian Church. And we talked to the pastor out there, John Steppen. He is okay that would be a great location for us to use for that during that period of time. What this would allow, yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask, locating it there, is it because there's a larger concentration of voters in that
Absolutely,
area,
and
or more residential?
I can point that out to you. That's this location here.
Mhm.
And another thing on these maps, all these maps were created by Robert. Robert took his time and his effort to come out and help us to show the density and where all the people live in
Yeah, turn
Franklin
the
County.
maps because the camera's up here and people are on.
Judge, I think Andrew can put those maps on.
Oh, okay.
But I'll be glad to.
Yeah, there he goes. There he goes.
Okay, the map he's got up there now shows where we're covering with 5 difference. It's this right here, and it shows total coverage of the most outskirt reaches of Franklin County, showing that we're still not giving full coverage up here, but we've never had full coverage up here, guys. Up in this top portion has never had any coverage any more than what you've got at this point. So we've had a rural portion of Franklin County that has always been without a voting precinct directly within 5 miles of it. All of the rest of these, if you'll go down to this map, you show once you overlap, you've got a small portion down here, but this is on the 127 corridor coming directly back in where they're going to pass 3 different voting
Nice.
locations.
That's my spot.
Yeah. Now, you asked the question, I'm trying to answer it. The Capital City Christian Church is right here.
Mhm.
If you do a 5-mile radius on just the Capital City Christian Church, you pick up about 60% of the population in Franklin County. I mean, you pick up all of this. So with that being said, we feel like with it being on the corridor of the Versailles Road, which has got 40,000 plus car count a day, it gives the best opportunity to the voters in Frankfort and Franklin County to have an in-out location for those 3 days of early voting. And it would allow them to travel on their way to Lexington, on their way to Louisville, on their way to wherever they're going, stop in early, vote, which is, what we're trying to do is provide opportunity for people to vote.
The question is, really, in my mind, are these full service voting centers? Because they're gonna be city races, county races, state races during this time.
The 2 voting centers will be yes.
The 2 voting centers.
Yes. Now, we have to have a conversation about what you all want it to look like for the other 6 locations. These 2 locations here will be strictly magisterial district only. They will only pick up this one will pick up for, this one will pick up Ball Knob,
Six.
and then this one will pick up only Schweitzer.
Okay,
They're dead end roads, guys. And I don't mean dead end roads. But you're not going to come from the Western Hill side
That's
and drive
Collins
over to,
Yeah.
you're just not going to do it. You're going to be voting from your location if you're going to go to Ball Knob or Schweitzer. Those are the only 2 that I'm set that have to, because we took the number of people and the precinct workers down from there. And there's also a cost associated with it. If I can only put 2 ballot faces in these, it takes the cost down tremendously. It keeps us from having paperwork out here for a voter. A downtown voter is not going to drive to Schweitzer. A downtown voter is not likely to drive to Schweitzer, not likely to drive to Ball Knob. So that's one of the things that we have to talk about. I wanted to make these magisterial and precinct eccentric. I want to make this one a vote center, this one a vote center, and then these are the ones we need to talk about on what you all want to do and how you perceive them to be. Do you want them to be able to drive from Western Hills side of town to the Franklin County side of town? Do you want them to be able to, how do you all see that? Do you want them to overlap votes? Where the confusion is going to come, it's not that we can't do it. It's the fact when Michael Mueller gets a vote over on the Western Hills side of town and the confusion of he doesn't know how to run an election. No, we can print that ballot. We can make it happen. But when votes start coming in, when Sherry Sebastian gets a vote over at the Franklin County High School, that's going to read on that tape at the end of the day. That's going to read on the front tape at the end of the day on the windows.
Jeff, what do you think the percentages of people that might do that? I mean, because I know other states have done similar things, because I even said it, like Austin, Texas did it years ago. You could vote anywhere and the voting went up a lot as far as percentages. So what do you think that would do to our numbers?
Kentucky has been so precinct driven, guys, that we're introducing a completely new concept. We are first to the market on this. And when I say first to the market, we're one of the first counties to come up with an idea of how to fix our situation, how to make our situation work for the voters in Franklin County. In my ideal world, you would make this a election headquarters. You would make Capital City Christian election headquarters, and these would all go magisterial eccentric. What I say by magisterial eccentric is just like we voted last time. JW's people went to Hearn, your people went to Franklin County, Scotty Tracy's district went to Peaks Mill, Sherry Sebastian's district went to Collins Lane, and then Marty's district went to.
So what you're
Western
proposing
Hills.
though is the 2 headquarters, quote unquote, could be anything.
Yep. And that way, if there's confusion, all right. So Sherry Sebastian's folks show up at Western Hills and they're supposed to be at Collins Lane. You give them options. You can go downtown to the old plant board building. You can go to the Capital City Christian Church because you're on your way out of town, Or you can simply just drive over to Collins Lane and vote.
Jeff, so that brings the question, would just the all-inclusive centers be open 3 days early, or would all of those precincts?
Just the two locations.
Just the
Remember-
all-inclusive?
Yeah, because we're using
Precinct.
schools, guys. We would be asking schools to
Right.
shut down
That's right.
for a 5-day period of time. And we have to have buildings that can take us through a weekend, that can take us, and the Capital City Christian Church and the old plant board building can handle us being there through that early voting period.
Can the 3-day prior period before the actual election day include Saturday and Sundays?
It has to include a Saturday now, and it is mandatorily written, and it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't do
And
anything
then
outside.
so Sunday and Monday are not voting days, and then it comes back to Tuesday?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. But this is where 574 covers, and it's probably where I should have gone, part of where I should have gone in the beginning. The changes for 574 are on the last page, on the very last page. Which we were thinking when we wrote this bill, I helped with this bill, that we were going to be able to take the precinct language out, which would have corrected a lot of this. When I say precinct language out, and if you'll flip back to the page before, it shows all the precincts that are in your districts. Are you following me on this page right here? All the different precincts that are in your district and the distance from what the original voting location was. But all these precincts, we now have to have ballots on election day. Instead of having 13 ballot faces, which is the total amount of ballot faces, we're gonna have to go back to having all of the precinct ballot faces. So it takes us from 13 to over 90. Are you all following me on that?
Yes.
That's where the confusion comes in. So if I go where I have over 90, I really have to have a very educated group of people working the voting locations so they can distinguish the difference in a ball knob ballot and a courthouse ballot. So they can even though they may have the exact same things on them, I still have to give them the precinct by precinct ballot. That's why I can't just go and say everybody gets to vote everywhere. If I go and do these polling locations like I'm asking to do, then only the precincts in your magisterial district will be at that location.
Okay, let me ask this.
Okay.
Typically in the first district, Green Wilson precinct votes at the same location as Farmdale precinct.
Yes, ma'am.
And typically the ballot faces, as I understand it, have been the same.
Yes.
Will there be some
See, that's where
overlap in that, because you're talking about the precinct ballot faces
I'll
being,
still have to have precinct by precinct.
still have to
ballot
have it,
faces.
and you'll still have to have it where it says Green Wilson precinct,
Yes, ma'am.
Farmdale precinct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's
Okay.
where I really had a problem with this legislation, guys. It's not that I don't want you to have precinct by precinct results. It's that it's a waste of tax dollars. For every book I print, it's going to cost you 33 cents a ballot by 50. So now I'm printing books of ballots for precinct level, not for ballot faces. What I could do in last year's election is I got to print them by ballot face. So I could say there's 52 voters. I need to order 70% of them, and I would order them, and then I would divide them out between the locations that they vote. And I would say it's more likely that this precinct needs to have their ballots here, or this precinct needs to have their ballots here, or this precinct needs to, and it was a cost savings. In this particular election, if we don't go to these being magisterials, you're going to have a print cost that it's going to well exceed. It's going to be 100% more than what you've seen in the past.
Well, you're telling us what you want. We're having this discussion, but you're recommending that we do magisterial.
I do. What I would recommend are 2 voting centers, 6 magisterials, And then these two out here picking up the rural portions, just being not even magisterial, but precinct locations only. Schweitzer and Bonov and St. John's.
So Jeff, what does that do to your budget? What does that number look like compared to
Glad you asked.
before?
Megan, where's my budget?
Second class.
Okay. If you'll look in on this, guys, on the 2022,
Okay. Yeah.
I've given you a precinct, a breakdown, and I don't know that I gave this to Andrew. Did Andrew get a copy of this? Okay. I apologize about that for the people that are watching, for Scotty, for anybody online. But this is a breakdown, guys. This is what we've assumed would happen. With the mail-in, these are all, the top of this right here is all labor. It is nothing more than labor, and it breaks down. The one number that I didn't know is election headquarters. I've gone ahead and doubled that number to $1,200 more. To add it to 20,800 is what we expect to pay in labor.
Okay.
Now,
And that represents the two.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
2 for
This-
3 days, right?
Yes. If we were to go back strictly to your 37 locations, the 40,000 is more what we could assume to pay.
Wow.
So we're saving a little money. Jeff, what does the law say about absentee? I see number of days, 10 is the, well, you will only accept absentee ballots 10 days prior to the election. Is that what this is saying here?
Talking about for the mail-in, Judge?
Absentee mail-in, yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
And yes, there is a cutoff date for when they can be coming in and when they have, because we have to have time to count them. We have to have results on election night. There's no more, we're going to wait until 6 days after election to have true numbers. You're going to have election night numbers. You're going to have election night totals that should be true to their face.
Okay.
Meaning they should all be in, they should all be counted, and we ought to be able to know who the winner is on the election night. So to answer your question, yes, that's exactly what we're talking about there. On the second page is something that I found out through the State Board of Elections in the last meeting that I was in. You will be covering the mail costs. Now, this page may look a little confusing to you. These are my expectations of what we're going to have. Remember, we gave the opportunity for everybody in Franklin County to vote by mail. In the primary, we mailed 14,974 ballots out. We were able to recoup all the postage costs from the state. In the general, it dropped down to 11,350. But if you can remember, there was more contention toward the end of that. I look for our primary number in the primary this year to be roughly 30% of what we did in the previous election. I look for us to have a cost of almost $7,000. So where you're saving on labor, you're going to turn around and spend it on mailing. I want you to be prepared for that, because these are things that you're going to have to put into your budget, or we can talk budget and figure out that the clerk's office can take responsibility for that. It's just going to come. It's just going to be the difference if we take it off and what you receive in excess fees. So if you want us, if the only reason we've been doing business the way we've been doing business on elections is because that's what I inherited. It's what I know. At the end of the day, it's your money. If you want me to spend it and then to give you less in excess fees at the end of the day, I'm okay with that.
Same difference.
It is the same difference. It is money,
Yeah.
and we are never strapped for cash at election point. If this election were in January and it were a special election, we couldn't pay for it. We don't have the cash
So
in January.
do you in-house print these ballots? Do they get sent out somewhere? Because what I'm seeing on here is postage and envelopes. So then there's other things to factor in if a contractor prints them or they're printed in-house, because there's ink and other stuff.
There's ink, there's ballots, all that stuff we've been paying for you on your
Okay.
behalf. That's been part of our election costs.
Oh.
We've been paying Harp Election Services for all of their fees, and it ranges around $25,000 per cycle. And I look for that number to go up to around 40.
Exactly. So the thing is, if we're printing more,
Mhm.
and it's clear that more are going to have to be printed,
Yes, ma'am.
that number is going to demonstrably increase. So what you were able to cover in the past, it sounds like that may not be something that you potentially could cover, and we'll have to look at, again, factoring that into the budget as well.
And really what we need to do is sit down and do, because you paid for a portion and I paid for a portion.
Right.
We need to look at a holistic.
We just need to look at the
500
cost.
foot line
Yeah.
and say, I don't care who pays for it. It's got to be paid for.
Right.
We're statutorily required to supply elections.
So Jeff, do you think from a bookkeeping standpoint, if you or anybody were to get audited, is there a better way to do it? Just, you made the comment, I've done this because that's how it was done.
I've
So
done
do we
it,
need
but
to change that is what I'm asking.
I don't think so. What's been nice is for you all to be able to pay the contract labor side of it. I don't see where we don't really have a payroll software. I don't have a software to pay 44 people, 144 people, 90 people the money. It's really a second oversight when you all pay the labor, quite frankly.
Are you planning to also include during the last election cycle, and I don't remember the time, but the title, there was an individual that also helped manage and direct people when they originally came, asking them questions. Do you have everything that you're going to need today? Do you have a license? Do you have this? Do you have that? And helping redirect if they needed to go to another location. Do you plan, I'm going to call that the public relations phase. Are you going to, and it wasn't the person that you had downtown, you had one at each precinct.
Right.
Are you planning to continue to have that person? Did you find value in that, I guess?
I did. I found value in keeping the public from being agitated.
Absolutely. I can tell you from doing it.
Yeah. I found value in someone standing out front going, let me help you before
Yep.
you get in the wrong line. And that value comes in, I don't have somebody mad. I don't have somebody agitated. I don't have somebody so, frustrated that they don't want to vote. If you frustrate public, they won't vote. Now they'll get on Facebook, they'll get on Twitter, they'll get on everything they can and tell how bad the county did, but they will not vote if you frustrate them. And that's the last thing we want to do. Especially, we've lost a whole generation of voters to COVID. I'm just going to go ahead and let you. We have to figure out a way to get back to these kids. With schools closed and with us not being able to get out there and get voting cards to Franklin County, Western Hills, Frankfort High, we've lost a whole year of voters. It's a non-election year, which is even worse because they don't think about it. They're 18 years old. They're going to college. They're going to go get a job. They're going to do anything else. We got to figure out a way to get those guys back too. And with this equipment, which we'll go over here in just a second, I'm going to try not to keep you all morning. We're going to try to get back out there as quick as possible and get back into the high schools and get back into the grade schools and get back in where we show the importance of voting.
Russ, you mind if I ask you a question? He said, I appreciate you being here. You're on the board, obviously. Do you have any input or insight from board meetings and things like that?
Well, pretty much what Jeff's going over. We've been hashing that out, and this is fairly new to me. I have understanding. Last time we had a meeting, it was a rougher draft than this.
Right.
Yeah, it was. But I do have what Jeff during general election, were people say in Lambert's precinct allowed to go actually vote in JW's? They couldn't do that then.
Yeah,
They
but
can-
I had ballot faces, guys. I did
Right.
not have precinct level ballots.
Right. So we're not going to do that. That's not going to. Okay.
Well, we go from having, and I'm trying to explain this, we go from having 13 pads of paper on the table to 92 pads of paper on the table. And 92 pads of paper on the table are a whole lot more to sift through.
We didn't have magisterial, we didn't have county elections, we had city elections.
Yeah, right.
And now we're gonna have both.
And
state.
right, and we were able to take all the ballot faces in totality, not precinct level. And it really changes the game, guys. I can take anybody and have them go through 13 ballot faces and hand their correct ballot out.
Jeff,
It makes it real tough to get them to go through 90 ballot faces.
to Russ's point, and partly to Sherry's point too, is there extra money are you anticipating extra money to be used for informational purposes? Via Facebook, via newspaper, via plan board on how to vote, and this is different, these two are
Absolutely.
precinct. So because I think that's gonna be important, just as important as having somebody out there to get that information before they get there too.
In my 2022 budget, you guys will see a $20,000 line item for nothing but publications.
In your budget or?
Yeah, in
okay.
mine.
Okay, I just had Tamara go check on what our budget is gonna have in. Did you and Susan confer on the election or the cost?
I haven't.
Okay.
This is, and you all may walk back in and go, no, I want to go to 37 locations. And I wanna
we haven't
go-
said that.
I understand that, but you all have the right. I'm trying to find a middle ground that is fiscal responsible and makes sense for the voters. Gets out there, gets to the voters and gets to a location where they're at.
You know, my take also is I have two things I'm looking at from an environmental standpoint. If we don't have to have 90-some books of paper, which is huge to me. And the other thing is, this is your wheelhouse, you know? I mean, if you and the board feel like this is probably the best way to get the most voters out there in Franklin County, I mean, it's what you do, so.
I can only say there's been a lot of effort put into it. There's
Well,
no doubt
yeah.
that this has been from Jeff's office.
And we're ahead. We're not running from behind. We're ahead of everybody else in the state. I would say this is the first time, and I haven't even asked Ross this, is this the first demonstration that you've done for a 2022 election cycle and new equipment, stuff of that nature?
Well, I've done a lot of those, but I haven't done the pre-planning for your vote centers, precincts and all that. You guys are ahead of the game on that.
Logistically, do you have any thoughts on this, Ross?
Yes.
Okay.
Vote centers are great. They're convenient to people. Let's say I'm working somewhere and I didn't vote early or by mail like I had a chance to, but I know by all the resources out there, hey, there's a vote center right here. I'm close. It's getting close to 6. I can pop in and vote. That makes it very convenient for a voter. It's an absolute nightmare for his staff if every one of these were vote centers and they go anywhere in the county to vote, because of the number of ballot faces you have and printing and trying to distribute and getting the right sets and amounts out to those locations. Absolute nightmare. The best thing you can do is keep people locked in to a location by ag district that encompasses your school boards and all that. Keep them locked in. He knows exactly how many ballot faces to send out there by history. You still have the ability for these to be vote centers, convenience. They have the 3 days early voting. History has told us, because I've been in vote center environment for 12 years now, 51% of the people vote early voting. Having said that, that's counties and states that allow a longer voting process for early voting. We're locked down to 3 days.
And we need 2 locations, folks.
When I last fall, whenever it was, we voted, the lines were all the way around virtually every day. So yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I felt like a Kings Island director some of the times. You're 45 minutes from riding the beast. You know, that's what I would walk through that line on multiple occasions and tell people how far out they were.
Jeff, what's the percentage of people that vote old school paper style compared to electronically?
We're going to get into that.
Okay.
We got no equipment.
All
And I'm not trying to.
No, that's
overshadow
fine,
the
that's fine. I
question.
just, oh, yeah.
But the answer to your question, it's going to be 100%.
Okay,
You used to be 50-50.
okay.
Prior to Jeff coming in,
Mhm.
it was almost 100% paper.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
He got
that's
a
lot.
good job of splitting up the voters 50-50, but now the state mandate with new voting equipment has to be all paper. So
All paper?
all paper,
Mhm.
no electronic.
No electronic. That's
Okay.
574 as well.
Okay. Interesting.
And you said previously the costs that were borne by the clerk's office were printing and,
We paid for all ballot face. We paid for all printing. We paid for any extra supplies, cords. You have a new cord, you have new batteries, you have you just have new stuff that
Yeah.
happens.
well,
every
you're
election.
scrambling around the election morning when
Yeah.
something doesn't work. Something didn't work at Collins Lane and we were right up till the last second.
Yeah.
Trying to get a cord to work.
Right.
And then we had to pigtail, we had to take something out and pigtail things in to make it work that day. Yeah, so.
So that averaged around $25,000 a cycle. Their average printing was approximately 23,000 per cycle. And when I say per cycle, that is a general and a primary. So it's 23,000 for the primary, 23,000. Really, a lot of times the primaries cost more than your generals
Jeff, what about,
because of the amount of ballot.
one of the issues we've talked about is ADA and things like that. Are we gonna talk about that a little bit?
We are completely compliant if we go to these locations,
To
100%.
all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we've used them before. We know we've got
Mhm.
pictures. We've got, they all meet the wheelchair accessibility. They all meet, they meet everything.
That's
we
one of the
need.
reasons you choose the buildings.
It is, they have parking, neither one of these locations are ideal, guys. The fire station out of Balnab, it meets all the requirements, but there is very little parking. Schweitzer Rotary Club, same way. It meets all the requirements, but there's very little parking. That's why I don't want to overwhelm them with any more than just their locational votes.
Makes sense. So what normally in elections, we put in, I see that in this year's budget, we have 40,000 for election officers
Okay.
per diem. And then you cover the costs, the different costs from the printing and all that, out of your excess fees.
Yeah, but that's only half a year, Judge. Because the way the fiscal year
Right,
falls,
That's exactly.
so
right.
it's
That's right.
80,000 for
That's
the
right.
entire
That's
year.
exactly right. That would be only for the primary.
Yes, yes, sir. It's really where you all run on a fiscal year and we run on a calendar year.
Yes.
We're always trying to figure out who's on first.
Yeah, I got you.
Once again, you've seen the excess fees. You've seen 800,000. You've seen, if we want to sit down and have a budget conversation about where it's best spent from.
That's for another day.
That it is, but I'm open to it. I'm open to the idea of what makes best, what makes it easier for you all. The biggest portion that I would have a problem with from the clerk's perspective is I do not have a payroll mechanism.
And that's where we go.
That is, you all can do the 1099s or whatever it takes, because we had some election officers in the primary and the general that make quite a bit of money, guys. I mean, and the reason being is we were open for a 45-day period of time doing early voting, mail-in voting, walk-in voting, day of election voting. I mean, it took a lot of resources to do it.
So Jeff, my kind of piggyback on what the judge said, I guess I would like to make sure, because, the budget's tonight, I guess, that you can talk with Susan and make sure that the number we have in there and the number you have in yours is good.
Will it cover the primary for
It would be
cost? It will
It'll
most
be the
definitely
primary.
cover the primary.
That's the way it should.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to make
It
sure.
would definitely cover the May primary.
Okay.
All right.
Guys, I've laid this out. We have thought long and hard about it. I think this scenario is about the voter.
Yeah,
This scenario is 100% allowing us to get where the voter can use the best option to vote.
I think we saw evidence that people appreciated being able to go to one place and vote early without doing the absentee, or besides the absentee. It was greatly appreciated, and our numbers were good.
Yeah.
I was surprised we weren't tops in the state, but that's another story.
I think some of that could simply be voter roll issues, but that's neither here nor there. The one thing that I will leave you with that I want to make sure, the two voting headquarters will make all the difference in the world on flow of traffic and getting people through. And I think that the number, when I gave you 30% of the general and the primary, that people will do the mail-in portion of it, I'll promise you I'm not far off on that. Don't let that number skimp by you, because that is a significant amount of money that we are going to pay. Franklin County likes to vote. Franklin County likes to vote the way they want to vote. And once they find out that that just because of age, they can do a mail-in vote and it's easy and it's a portal that they can handle, they're going to use it.
One question about the absentee,
Yes.
is it, no excuse absentee?
No.
Do you have to have
It's gone back to an excuse, mail-in absentee. If it was non-excuse, if it was no excuse, your number would, I would assume you would have 10 or 12,000 ballots again. I mean, I think people liked it well enough that a portion of this population, A, knows it's safe, and B, sees the convenience factor of it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to order a ballot and let it sit there. You know, it's probably your most educated votes can be offered from a mail-in ballot process. They got to sit there and watching your debates. They got to understand, they got to look you up. They didn't get there and find out you were on their ballot for the first time. So some of your most educated votes probably come from the mail-in portion of this.
Question on the two, I'm gonna call them headquarters, you know, the plant board building and the Capital City Christian. Do we do any like in-kind donations or anything for them letting us use their facilities for 3 days?
Nope, but we're not going to use this one for 3 days. We're going to use it for 90. The headquarters down here at the old plant board is a 90-day facility. We can't do these elections, guys, with the buildings we have. We have to have this building. This building is the key to the success. I've got to start mailing ballots. I've got to get Megan and her staff situated. I've got to go ahead and have the machines up. I have to have borders up. I have to have a mail room set up. I have to have, and it's a 90-day process.
Well, let me say this, for God's sake, I hope Second Street is in better shape than it is today.
You and me both.
Because it is in
So they donate,
horrendous
they
shape.
donate the building to us for that
They
time?
do. And you can thank, and you should thank
That's what I
Tommy
was-
Russell,
That's what I was,
and you should thank the staff at the city, because I've gotten very little heartache over this building. They've stepped up to help us every time we've asked about it. I can't get anything formally in writing, but we will continue to have those conversations. Yes, ma'am.
What about signature cures and rejected ballots?
Okay.
How's that gonna happen? Are we gonna have to do, are you gonna do phone calls to get them in to do signature cures? Or are you gonna have to officially notify them in writing?
I'm gonna follow 574 to the T.
Okay, what's it
Last
say?
time in the primary and the general, I went over and beyond. I caught every single rejected ballot through the Board of Elections.
Okay,
I had my
so you
board
called them?
call. I had an email sent to them and a letter sent to them if their ballot was rejected. That's part of that 10-day period you were asking about.
Yeah.
That's a cure period.
Right, so the rejected ballots are,
What are you gonna do this year?
I'm gonna follow 574 to the law because I don't want us to
What
get in
is that?
trouble. I don't think we can call them. I think it's gonna be email or hard mail. I'm gonna have to read 574 again and find out what we can do legality wise. What I don't want to do, what has happened, guys, is with this new election bill, they're trying to make it fair for Anderson and Franklin to have the same election period and time frame. What that means is our senators are the same, right?
Mhm.
So if he started 5 days earlier, or if I started 5 days earlier, they're trying to make sure that everybody's running off the same playing field.
That's understood. That's reasonable.
You know, last spring, we had more cured ballots call in. And I want to tell you, I called 250 people and they were absolutely just could not, we called. They just couldn't believe, they were so thankful. I had that so much over and over again.
Yeah.
That's just, thank you very
That
much.
was a great thing.
And they were surprised. That was a great thing.
If we're allowed to do that, we will be doing that again. I felt like it was a great service, but what I'm not going to do is get the county in trouble for doing something that does not read to the letter of the law.
Understood.
Thank you.
So do you need us to voice our opinions on your proposed, voting?
I think what I want to do at this point, if it's okay, is we're going to final out this plan, regardless of what we put on paper. I still have to take to the State Board of Elections. I still have to get them to okay our plan. Now, I will tell you that we are going over and beyond. We probably could have gotten away with the original 6 that we did, call them magisterial districts and rock on and do one voting headquarters and everybody would be fine. But I don't think that properly covers all of Frankfurt and Franklin County. I think to properly cover them, we have to get back out in the northern portion of the county, which we've done, and we have to do a second voting headquarters. I think it allows people, we can't expect, especially, I'm glad you brought up Second Street. Our voting numbers would be half of in-person early voting if Second Street still looks the same. We don't give them another option. Because I'm not going to talk somebody that lives on the east side or west side of town into coming downtown and fighting Second Street if it's one-way traffic with 2 bulldozers and it looking like it is right now. I mean, we're just not going to talk them into it. So this other location will help with that. After we get all this done and get it passed, which I have seen no problem with the state going through and okaying, I will come back to you all with our okay plan. We'll have it written. We'll have it drawn out and we'll be ready to implement it. The implementation side of it is going to be very important. I'm going to need every magistrate to help me. You've got to get to your people and tell them. I mean, you're already going to be knocking on every door and walking every neighborhood. You need to be able to help educate where that voter goes, where that voter has the right to go. So I'm going to need help with that, even regardless how much money we spend. If we spend all 20,000 in 2022 educating the voter, we will still not get to somebody. And that's where you're all going to help.
Okay, so you're gonna proceed with what you've got proposed there to the state and ask, they have to approve that this is gonna be your plan?
Yep.
Does that go to the Secretary of State,
It goes to the State Board of Elections.
State Board of Elections? Okay, are you part of that, Russ?
No, we're at the county level.
Okay. And somebody from Frankfurt on State Board of Elections?
For a long
George
time,
Russell.
George Russell was.
But he's retired, he's not
He's
now.
retired, yeah.
Okay.
Guys, at this
I
point,
think it's a good plan.
thank you. I want to turn it over to Ross Robertson from Harp Election Services. Harp Election Services have been servicing Franklin County since before any of us had been in office or anything. I can't even find where they started working with us in Franklin County. They've been doing it that long. What's great about Harp Election Services is they are located right here in Lexington. If we ever run out of ballots, which we very rarely do, that anybody knows about, but we have had many of times when we've had to run to Lexington and get pads of ballots printed right there on the spot. It's not only convenient, it's also, it keeps us out of trouble. It keeps us from running out and it allows us to do our jobs correctly. They've looked at this. Ross has looked at this for the first time today, but he's the one that has given the suggestions on only having 2 headquarters and then having the rest of them as magisterial districts, just for the fact that it is easier to show and have people go to and understand what's going on with it. I have all the faith in the world. I don't know this equipment near as well as he does. That's why we brought him in. And I think that at this point, I'm going to turn it over to him. If you have any questions, he's a great presenter and he will go over everything with you.
These are the voting machines that we'll be using in the primary.
This is the equipment that we put the grant for.
Yeah.
This is all your brand new equipment.
Okay.
All right.
This is actually your equipment, came from your facility. I gave each of you a packet. You have a Verity Scan, which is this device right here. You have a Verity Touch Writer, which is next in line. And one I didn't bring in is a Verity Print. The Verity Print looks a whole lot like this setup. That's kind of in office where you can do ballot on demand printing. Jeff has covered a scenario when you all had the grant money to purchase enough equipment, not knowing how House Bill 574 was going to run. He did it. He could go precinct or he could go vote center or you go mag districts with vote centers. So you're all covered on equipment, you have plenty, but he does have the ability in these 2 locations that are vote centers to do print on demand. If somebody from up here, down here, came to one of those locations and he was short on ballots, he can print it right on demand right there for him from any precinct level. Some other features on this new equipment, you notice it's a lot lower, right? This was for accessibility to disabled voters. Never thought about before, but those other ones used to set up here, the little screen was flat. Somebody's in a wheelchair, folks, and they're trying to scan a ballot and it got rejected. They couldn't see anything. Absolutely, personally, never thought about that. Your poll workers had to be involved, almost hovering, which is illegal now. And we've been on this equipment for 2 years. Every training I've done with the county, I get 0 phone calls from the county from poll workers having issues. It's that easy. The setup's easier, the working process, the cabling, you don't have any more pins going in the back. It's USB connected, slides right in. There's 1 cable connecting your printer over here. These hold 4,500 ballots. Your other ones used to hold 2,500 ballots. The coolest feature on this, in my opinion, if we ever had a service problem in the past, we had to cut the seal off the front, right in front of people. Take this off, put a new one on, then reseal it, get it started. Now we have a technician door in the back. All we have to do is unlock this, reach in with the string, I can pull it, take that off, put it back on, never seeing, never touching the ballots. It's called a warm and fuzzy feeling for your voters, right? You don't want to see somebody coming in and doing something with the voting machine right in the middle of the election. Just doesn't look good, right? Can't see it from here, but there's green lights, landing lights for the voters now. We went and worked with the AIGA, which is American Institute Graphic Artists, did Design for Democracy templates, plain English looking. The ballot layouts are a lot easier to look at. I'll pass a few of those down. One of the best features of this is if you're voting on this and it's a general election, you have write-ins. As board members, some of you may or may not be in on that process, when they had to go in on write-ins and look at their screen and go name for name. And if you had 750, you're looking at, now you can do block write-in resolution. So used to it as person by person, but now you can group them all together by race into a block, and that process goes like that now. Robust reporting, now this new system, they can design their own printouts however you all want to see it for the county. Plain English on the screen, and what I mean by that, if a ballot rejects in plain English, it tells the voter what's going on. Used to, it's just a little screen come up and says contest overvoted. They didn't know what that meant. Now it tells you exactly plain English. Hey, President of the United States, contests have been overvoted. You made too many choices. Your choices are, you can pull the ballot, get a new one, or you can hit this button that says cast ballot as it is, and that race won't count. It'll say it right on the screen. Very big feature. One of another big features to you, and I don't have an example of it here, but when you have your city races on the back, has anybody ever got calls or complaints that I didn't get to vote the back because they didn't turn it over? Now, if you vote one of these and the backside was never voted, it'll spit it out and say, hey, you didn't make choices on one side of this page, letting the voter know, hey, there's more races. Great feature.
Let me interject in that. If you'll remember in the last general, we had 2 constitutional amendments on there. Most people had no idea what the constitutional amendments were, but then they would leave, especially young voters, and say, I didn't vote that. They'd go home and tell their mom and dad, and then their mom and dad would come back and go, well, why didn't you vote that? So this will help with that situation, especially with young voters, to know that they're at least back there. If it didn't before, it wouldn't even say anything.
So it would let you know on constitutional amendments. So it is categorized by.
What
county.
race? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I do want to show you this feature too, and I'm not sure. What this says here in plain English says one or more marks are too small. Marks that are too small may or may not be counted. Folks, that is huge. Some of the ballots in the past with your past current equipment and all other vendors, if somebody rests a pin and puts a mark in there, the machine picks it up, but it treats it as an overvote. What this is telling you as a voter is, hey, you got a mark in there. Could be a stray mark you didn't intentionally do, but it's notifying you that you have a mark in there and that may or may not be counted. What they've done is change this, that 25% of this box has to be filled in to accept it as a legitimate mark. Had we had that about 2 years ago, I got involved in Owensboro in a state rep race that we spent the whole weekend and
I
it
remember that.
flipped
Yeah.
because marginal
It sure
marks
did.
like that, that would have never came to light if we'd already had that.
I remember last year, I put an X in a box and the X went outside of the box and it threw it out.
Yeah, because you probably drug your X from one box into the other. And
No, I
made it.
didn't actually do that. It just came out of the box
Okay,
and it threw it out. It said invalid. So I had to go back and redo a sheet on it. I don't know why I did that. Or I never even thought about that, but whatever. It
Yeah.
does happen.
yeah, it happens a lot. So the couple things, if you've noticed, and I don't have the old ballot style, these are much cleaner. There's more separation between the boxes for those elderly that shake. That eliminates a lot of that. That marginal thing will eliminate a lot of overvotes, which are good. You don't want overvotes inside those, because if you ever get into a recount, you have to deal with overvotes. The commission has to sit and look at them and say, which one did they really intend to do? And that's where that
Hanging
gets into,
chance. And you deal with hanging chance.
No, yeah, wow.
it's kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, this device here has a detached printer. All we're doing with this device, in the past, you all had that other machine that Jeff did a really good job pushing people to the DRE, electronic piece. This is not a DRE. This is paper. It's a ballot marking device. A disabled voter, and I want to stress that, disabled voter are the only people really needing to use this. It has the same tactile wheel as your old electronic machine that they're familiar with the braille and the moving. The headphones, or it does have a option on here for sip and puff for the paraplegic people. This has the ability to change the background from black to white letters, or change it from color to, what's more appeasing. You can speed up, slow down the volume for the voter. But all they're doing is going in here, making selections. It prints a ballot, and that ballot comes over here and gets printed. That's for folks that don't have the ability to take a pre-printed blank ballot and use an ink pen and fill it out.
Do you have a specific person for that, for help on those machines, those type of machines?
I will. The handicap accessible equipment has changed for the better, but it is also, when stuff changed for the better, becomes a little more complicated.
Absolutely, I can see that.
Um,
That's why I asked.
And the complication of it, the state of Kentucky changed the way we do any ballots. Everybody's gonna have a paper ballot at the end of the day. So the people we got in Franklin County and the state of Kentucky, voters got a tad bit agitated in the last election on the mail-in ballots. So we had an extreme amount of voters that wanted to vote the electronic equipment. So there was no way that they could be responsible for a paper ballot issue. Make sense? At this point, there's not going to be that option. Everybody's going to have a paper ballot. Even after I vote this equipment, it's going to print here and it has to be fed there. This holds no votes. This equipment, I can't unhook and plug it in over there and get the votes like I used to be able to total together. This is going to be a paper ballot. It's going to feed here. I'm only reading the card here.
So how many of those do we own?
We own 32 of these, but I took And you'll remember during the last, when we were buying this equipment, when I put the writers in and took these out, I did that so we had the ability to print the ballots at all the locations. And I never thought we would go back to every single precinct being open. So I took them down to what would be 32 total precincts if we had to have them. To be ADA compliant, we have to have this at every location.
Okay.
But you only have to have one.
Now I'll have 2 at my vote centers and maybe 3 or 4, depending on what we see use-wise out of it. But we will have all this equipment to keep the line going and keep it sped up.
Is any of this like bilingual or anything?
Yes. This equipment is used in California.
Okay,
It handles 52 different languages.
okay,
I hope we never, ever get to that here.
right, right. But it has these have the capability.
You hope we don't ever get to the 52
Different languages.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they have the capability.
It does.
Okay,
It
thank you.
does. Yeah.
Hey, which I'm gonna tell you right now is needed.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
There's one thing that I'm not 100%, and that's bilingual.
Yep.
And we ran into a lot of issues when you start trying to, when you can't communicate. That will help us.
Yeah, I remember teaching a class 2 years ago.
About 4 years.
4
I know
years.
where you're going with this.
But it came up in the class. I mean, it's how to teach a poll worker to deal with somebody with a different language
Mhm.
is near impossible.
Right.
You don't do like that commercial with the turtle and say, you are.
No, but, and the funny part about it, people want to get loud
Oh, yeah.
when they can't speak or communicate.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. Just quickly, this is one that came out of that machine. That's what it looks like when this ballot is marked out of the machine. Here's a blank ballot out of that pre-printed. You can't tell the difference. And that's the beauty of this
Is it the
equipment.
same type of paper,
Absolutely.
same quality of paper?
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Good question.
This is a blank one.
Okay.
This right here
Okay.
is ballot paper.
That's okay, it's called ballot paper.
Yeah, and that is the same paper that we use to print your ballots from.
Okay.
It has to be a certain spec on the ballot paper, but plain paper goes in there and it turns in a ballot like I passed out to you.
How long does, and how many will that print on that ink roll?
The ink roll handles about 500 pages.
Okay,
Here's the thing, you're not gonna have that many people voting on it.
okay,
You just won't. Your normal people that used really needed to use your DRE, those will be voting over here.
right,
I bet each location's gonna have maybe 1 or 2.
okay,
Some will have 0, but it's required,
Yeah.
AD required. And that's why you only have to have 1 at each of these locations. Now, he may set out extra, knowing where he needs them, but you have plenty of them to set out there. Everybody in your county is voting paper. And everything gets voted over here paper.
so let me ask you, what, if something fails, what will fail on that machine?
On this machine,
Yes,
probably over time down the road, like you saw with your old equipment, there'll be scanner heads where they get worn out and it's a replacement scanner head.
so for instance, do we have a spare scanner heads in case?
You have plenty.
These are brand new machines, so.
Well, yeah,
no,
but
no,
things
no.
aren't built like they used to be built, so
Yeah, but you got
anything can
extra
fail.
machines too.
Well, let me also say this. Our old equipment lived its first 10 years in dog years. What I mean by that, it was over at the road department. It went through hot summers, cold winters, rats, birds, everything else. These are in a heck of a lot better location.
They are.
They're tempered. They do not go to the extremes. I would expect, of course, the thing about it is to expect how long they're going to last. They're going to last as long as technology lasts.
Yeah.
As long as they have the technology to change them, they're going to last. But that's still only a 15-year period piece of equipment.
You have a 16-year period on this.
Yeah.
You're gonna get 4 elections.
Right, but what I'm getting at, you could buy a
Down the
brand
road,
new
you're
car
gonna
and it
start
break
having
down on
problems.
your way home. I mean, I'm just wanting to make sure, and I'm sure you are, that we're prepared.
Digital, right?
Yeah.
You can get a brand new one and a month from now, that thing,
I've had more problems with my new phone than any of my old ones,
same
so.
stuff. I'm not
that's
gonna
what I'm
sit
getting
here and
at.
tell you guys this is 100%, you're not gonna have any problems. That's why we buy spares.
With-
Right, I just wanted to make sure.
With
You're
10
covered. Yeah.
locations.
Yeah.
I'll be able to control that better than I would ever
Okay.
with 39 locations.
And Jeff knows this, being right down the road, we have had to come over and do some emergency things with the ODA right there again.
Right.
We have our own set of equipment that we use that goes out as loaners if he ran out.
Right.
So we're not gonna let you fail. If you fail, we fail.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
Anybody like to vote on it or see it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, come
I'd
on
like
up.
to vote on it. Yeah.
I apologize, I only have one pen.
I have ballots out. They've all got.
You need a black pen?
I've got
You got one?
Yeah, black or blue. And if somebody wants to come over here,
Thank you.
I'll engage this for you and let you.
I'll try that one.
Thank you.
Yes, city ballot here.
All right.
We could take
I
one
would
here.
do myself.
Judge, you
And I
need a
think
pen?
I've got two
Yeah.
of them here. Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks. So any type of pen would work,
Any blue or black ink pen.
okay?
I'm gonna try.
I am too.
Different-
I'm trying to figure
different
different
mark.
things out. I'm
You
with
can do, try to trick the system,
I'll try.
however you want to do it.
Yeah, there you go. Both of me up.
But when you trick it, it gives you a
Everybody else
I'm
kickback.
curious what the code is.
I want you
All right.
to see as a voter, your
Where you going,
experience.
Terry?
So everything's gonna be scanned over here.
So I face up,
It
face down.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Just can't go sideways. Like it.
Like mine.
Well, I'm gonna see. So I did a right in and I just did a little X here. So it should do something, right?
It
In
should-
theory.
It should take,
So,
It should.
So I
Even
click
with
on
the
that
X?
line right there, I'm gonna see if it takes that.
it should.
It should take it, okay.
Really?
No, I'll put a bad
That's
note.
a good idea.
I
You
did.
got enough margin.
But even on one of them, I just did like, I guess it was more than 25%. Okay, really? JW, it's not that hard, buddy. It's just practice.
man, that's.
All right, work. Good deal. Thank you.
So that right there, that should take that.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Because anything outside the box, it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't go into another box.
Okay, all right, good deal. Oh,
I'm getting ready to.
I didn't see your name on the ballot, JW, so I wasn't able to vote for you.
I seen Megan.
You know,
I did.
I saw Megan's, I see Megan's on there.
see, I
You're on the ballot.
see, I thought
Megan,
somebody
see that.
would really trick it. I overvoted this on purpose because this is what voters do and the experience they get. It's going to reject it, but it says, United States rep in Congress, too many choices are marked to make changes on the ballot or cast as is.
So what would happen if you colored Democrat, but voted, then went down and voted for Republican?
Okay, that's called a crossover. So you say straight party
You did
Democrat,
a
right?
straight party Democrat,
All right, so right now by making that mark, every Democrat gets a vote.
exactly, but then,
I want to come here in
And you-
this state senate.
yeah, and vote
That's-
for Republican.
That's totally allowed because that's called a crossover. Anything done inside here supersedes that straight party ticket.
Okay. That's interesting.
That's the number one asked question during the general election.
Okay.
So if just, I don't want to take the time to correct this, I just hit cast ballot and they'll go ahead and accept it. That one race that was overvoted will not count. It's like nulled out.
So ready for this one? This mayor?
All right, county clerk, too many choices in mark, too small. So. Oh, that whole dot caused that.
Okay.
So that race wouldn't count if you get cast as is, but if you wanted to new one and redo it, we pull it, spoil it, give you a new ballot.
What's it say about the others?
Everything, everything,
Because I used pencil.
it's fine, it's got enough coverage. We say
Okay.
this,
Right, that's why I did it. That's why I did it. On purpose, I used pen.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's all about recount, why it's rejects.
Did you write in? I did.
From this.
You can keep that as your souvenir.
I voted on this. It was neat. You can type in a write-in and it shows, demonstrates the name of the write-in person. And then
Oh, did you do it right in on there?
I should have tried one in French.
Do it however you want to do it.
You want to do another?
Well,
Yeah,
and the one I thought was
I'll
gonna
get
catch, and I
somebody
did
in
it circle.
French.
I guess it's more than 25%. I was trying to get it to kick it out.
I know French much better.
So
than
this,
Spanish.
this right here is a, what you said here is- So this is what poll worker does, it gets it all the way up to this.
Mhm.
And then they would accept the voting. It's out.
Yeah.
Reads
Reads
in here.
less ink. better.
Here's where you can go and change
Yeah.
the screen.
So if you like accidentally.
Does it really make sense?
Yeah.
You did in pencil?
But it's
Some in pencil, some in
That's gonna
pen.
be difficult.
It's okay.
It works.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm
just.
not scared.
And it kind of always is right.
Russ, how you
Well,
been?
Megan,
I'm good.
You all right?
See you looking hard these days?
I'll
see you
Hey, Mark,
guys.
can I
Always.
take this out? Hey, straight up, come here.
Yeah.
Well, have a-
Rescued it for you, man.
Thank you.
I want to know.
Man's gotta have an ability to keep his drink cup.
And then turn right, the helper.
Yes, sir.
For some reason, I need.
Yeah.
On the straight ballot, somebody picked a straight ballot, so they opt to go down here and vote for Republican. But it's still, it will count as Democrat votes.
All right.
So he,
I just did it.
Okay.
Straight Democrat.
but he opted to vote for Peter Parker here.
So this race will be Republican, these will be Democrat, Democrat,
They'll get
Democrat.
picked up unmarked, okay?
Workers know, like, hey,
You know, Jeff was telling us last time on here.
Be like, Sophie,
All you
cheese.
gotta do is he said, put a simple spoon in there. and
Yeah,
it's-
right.
It'll work.
People get all, yeah, they get all kind of caught right
So,
there.
so here's why by language and state law, we say you have to use black blue ink. Because scanner heads will not pick up red ink pen. Somebody had a red ink pen. It's the red laser would shoot right through the red one and you can see it.
They need that.
Here's the real quick.
So these words, that word, that's all good. But if a recount's going on, it's easier to tell what your
They're young, yeah.
intent was by seeing something marked, fully marked in. It's just, you
Yeah,
know.
no doubt, there'll be no doubt, right.
Yeah, that's
You know,
what I did.
I haven't had it long enough.
It'd be easy enough to have like an SOP just to show like, hey, if this person.
It really
This
wouldn't come into
disabled.
play even if there was colorblindness because it still demonstrates a spot.
So
Because
the
like you
second
can't set it for
election
green
equals
or
that.
red, but there's still a blob that shows it.
That won't be.
Straight from colorblind.
It's gonna be, it's gonna be an election headquarters. It's gonna be in that. This is gonna be
That
like
wouldn't
90
have a,
days.
okay, now there could be some based on visual acuity.
Okay, what Jeff was saying, that, well, I need to have it.
We have to know ahead of time.
Fade out joint.
We have to-
So that means it's still like-
These are no, because they're the ones.
And that has that process that
It's
you-
only-
When she did that. It brings out.
Yes, I was thinking about
Presidential election.
If not, we might have to redo
Yeah, we got some military problems.
Explain to them.
What's
Yeah.
stronger?
My daughters would
Get
count.
it and get it.
Because you don't touch it.
Yeah.
They touch it and it says. Donald Trump.
So-
I always use
Do
that.
you want to vote for Donald Trump? Yes. And then,
Bill.
do you want to vote for Joe Biden?
Yeah.
The scary part, do you want to vote all Democrats? Do you want to
Okay.
vote all
So
Republicans?
step by step,
So
walk them
it's
through it.
more, what we find with this equipment is the handicap of not being able to read.
Interesting.
Very.
I read more ballots to people during
But they're.
the presidential general than I do in the other 3 election cycles.
Wow.
And let's, Jeff asked me a good question. Let me clear something up for you. We talked about languages that can be built, that has to be programmed. Because he said, where do you switch it to get to French or
Yeah.
Spanish? We have to know ahead of time what the
It's on here.
jurisdiction wants. We build it in with that language. And then if we have multiple languages, when it first comes up, it says, what is your preferred language? English, Spanish, French? You pick it and then the whole ballot's in that, along with the audio that
And
goes on.
we will build every one of these to go Spanish as well. It will allow us to be able to best help our voters. Franklin County has, I don't know what the percentage is, but we do have a percentage of Spanish-speaking voters that are 100% qualified to vote. You know, that's, I thought he was going to tell the story of the one when the gentleman goes, well, do you speak Gaelic? And he's like, no, I don't speak Gaelic, but neither does anybody else at this point. You know, it becomes,
But his father did.
right, yeah, it becomes, some people just don't like voter choice. I'm 100% against that. Voter choice is voter choice. I don't care how you want to vote, as long as we can provide that it's 100% safe, then I think you ought to get the right to vote any way that we can accommodate you.
Well said.
She's.
I'm still, it's walking through
Yeah,
the,
yeah, it's
the
cool.
verbal
It's
cues, the
it's
verbal
a
cues are great.
tutorial she's going through. It
Yeah.
teaches the voter how to
That
use
was
it.
really great.
A quick little story on that. The last election, Trimble County had their first 17-year-old that moved into 18, got a vote in the general. Totally blind. He is a Kentucky Braille champion. I was on the phone with him for like a minute and he goes, got it. You went through your tutorial already, got the Braille down. He voted in 2.5 minutes. Typical blind voter, first time on a machine like that, 6 minutes. That kid did it in 2.5 minutes. Impressive. He loved it.
Your blind voters that are young, because I'm not going to say we're lucky to have, but we have a pair of them in Franklin County. They move through this machine quick. A lot quicker than the visual scene do. I mean, once
Young.
Yeah, exactly.
Technology.
they really move through quick.
That'll be
So while she's doing that, one other thing that's a benefit of this equipment, and I can't speak to the counties that are getting involved in vote centers and what all of your plan is and they're using the old technology. If you have a vote center here and here, at the end of the day with the old equipment, if you had 38 precincts loaded on a scanner in a vote center, when we do the tape, you'd have all 38 on the tape as your results. Now we have the ability, instead of doing that and then cutting 38 different precincts, it'll consolidate it. So all of the one race will be consolidated. And that way you don't have 38 tapes hanging on the doors of the vote center.
Do you understand what that means?
Machine,
I'm sorry?
so you have 4 machines in there.
You'll have a
four tapes
tape,
on
you'll have a
there.
tape for each of the 4 machines, yes. Yes. But that's important. And also in the past, what he was talking about before, you have 2 precincts, you say up here and 2 here,
1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Uh-huh.
This one that has 2 on it, in the past, we've always had the ability to combine on one machine, multiple precincts. Before House Bill 574, you were never allowed to do that. You had to have a separate machine for every precinct. Now we can take one machine and put both precincts on it. You still may want to have 2 out there.
So a ballot and something like that, if on the ballot, it had Michael Muller and it had J.W. Blackman. And
That will never happen.
that won't happen.
Yeah, you can't, you're talking about ballot faces versus precinct ballots. Neither of the 2 magisterial districts will ever be on the same ballot.
Okay. All right, that's what I was.
Yeah.
I
You
was
never,
thinking as you were saying.
yeah, you'll never have a crossover like that.
Okay.
And that's, quite frankly, that's why only 2 voting centers are what can be done.
So when you go in there and you say your name, they'll pull up
The right precinct.
the right precinct for you, and then that ballot will be printed for you, or that ballot will already be there.
It will either already be there to be printed, and I will have someone sitting at the table making sure that we have, because you're gonna have 90 different pieces of paper.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a 1 through 90 code of some type. I haven't figured all this out in my head. I've got an idea how it works, but we'll get it figured out. We'll probably have 3 or 4 people sitting there typing it in and printing the ballots and making sure they're handing the ballots out. Because if we do that, we can still keep the lines going. We can have the assumed ballots. We can have jet. We can have some of the bigger precincts that are right there. We can have those already printed. But for all the rest of the ballots, what we're going to just have to do is is print them as they walk in.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to scan them in, and we're gonna have to print as they walk in and get them through as quick as possible. And if I have 4 people sitting there typing them in, well, they can print, once these get going, you can print ballots off one right after another.
Yeah, and Jeff's staff actually has another bigger job too with the poll books. What we do on the equipment has to kind of be mimicked on the poll books, because if you only have 2 precincts here, that's all they're gonna deal with. Vote center's gonna have all 38 precincts, but these may only have 5 or 7 precincts.
5 to 7.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's gotta be mimicked to make the poll workers' ability not to sit and sift through 38 precincts with voters coming in.
And we're gonna have to really lean hard on 7 or 8 particular individuals to understand it ain't gonna be a 2-hour class that I can give these individuals that are at these vote centers. These are gonna be hour-long class or hours and hours of classes for me to explain exactly how you run a vote center. I'll have a written procedure that I'll share with you once I get it done. But it will take a lot of thought and time put into it. Once again, the vote centers before election day can be ballot faces. I really wish they wouldn't have done this. On election day, it's gotta be precinct ballots. So on election day, that Capital City Christian's the one that just keeps on coming to mind. I'll have Jet, I'll have Station Springs, I'll have those ballots there in a box, but the rest of them we're just gonna have to print. If not, we're gonna spend an enormous amount of money printing ballots that never get used.
So in the primary, you're saying you'll have like 90, but in the general, it'll be less, won't it?
Probably not. It depends on your splits. It depends on your school boards. It depends. I mean, there's so many working parts into all these ballot faces.
But the good news is.
But in the primary, you're guaranteed to have 90 because of the Republican Democrat.
Yeah, 44%.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons the committee wanted these machines, because you could cue that in or put that in at the computer, and then you could just press the button and it would print it there on site.
Yep. And then eventually what we'll probably get to, and I don't think we're there yet, is the e-poll book scans the ID. The e-poll book has a small printer on the side of it, prints out, says 037. You take the 037 over to this piece of equipment. They scan it, they print your ballot. You walk out, you vote, you walk out the door. We're just not there yet.
That exists. There's a little adapter that hooks here with a scanner. The poll book prints out a barcode label. They bring it over here, shoot it. Poll workers out in the picture at that point trying to pick the right precinct. It automatically prints that blank ballot.
And if that technology is available before we get to this, and we can figure out a way, and we can figure out how to make the cost work, and we can figure it out, we will do it. But I don't think the e-poll book, what we use and what you know as the e-poll book, is ready for it yet. I don't think they've designed the technology. I think the technology's there, but I don't think they've got ours where it needs to be yet for the state of Kentucky. I could be wrong on my statement on that, but
I have to be careful. I have to say.
Yeah,
It
I
has
got
the capability for it.
but it's got to be programmed,
Yes.
and I'm not a computer programmer.
And it's, right now, they haven't had them to work with us to do that.
Cool.
Saying it nicely.
Guys, this has been a very productive meeting. I appreciate your time, your effort. You know, it's Thursday morning. I know you all got some other things to be doing. I know you're meeting all day long. I hope that you feel like you've gotten something out of this. I hope at the end of the day, you feel like you're educated on where we're going with elections. My door is always open to each and every one of you. If you have any questions, or if you get there and you're like, hold on, time out. This doesn't make sense. Now I thought about it. Call me, pick the phone up, email me, ask me questions. Because guys, the way we're looking at these elections, I think is revolutionary. I think we will become what will look like a model for the state of Kentucky. I think they will start going, you know, these guys figured it out. These guys figured out what it takes to actually get to where the voters are. done it in a budget that I think is very appropriate. We've done it in a budget that I think is long-term, has the ability to continue to work. I can't be prouder of the team that we have. I can't be prouder of our vendor. I think we've really, really got a good system in place. Will we have hiccups along the way? Yep. If I wrote a procedure right now, there will be things that are left out of it. But we're working hard to make sure that doesn't happen. We're also we're gonna file all this and do all this on old precinct technology. And they're gonna come in next year, halfway through the year, in the middle of this election, and make us do reapportionment. I'm gonna warn you all.
Will that be
JW,
effective for the primary?
it will not.
Okay.
And where you file is where you'll stay, because that's what it is. But I'm gonna use JW at this point. If you look down through there, JW is sitting on 7,600 voters. They're not gonna allow me to do that. They're not gonna let him be able to hold 15% more voters than all the rest of the magisterial districts. It's just not gonna happen. They're gonna make me reapportionment and get those into magisterial districts where everybody is within a error of margin. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for, our hands are tied because they won't let us go on and do the apportionment that we need to do. It's usually done in this off year, so it's prepared and ready for your filing deadline. It's not gonna be. And we can't go above and beyond KRS to make it. So those are the things I see that are gonna be hiccups for the 2022 year.
Do you have a tentative time frame when you think that will be done,
I don't.
if it's forced within that year?
No, it's forced to be done by August of next year. Now, is that correct, Megan?
It's not gonna affect, it's not gonna affect this year's election,
It will
or
not.
next year's
The
election.
general,
It will, no, it
Maybe.
won't.
it's after the general.
It's filed in August, but if you already filed in your primary, you still stay in your district as a representative.
Yeah.
Not, I don't foresee this, but I'm gonna use Michael as an example. They take Michael Mueller and recarve it and say he's out of his district. He still stays there for the 4-year term. He still represents the people in that district for the 4-year term. But the following deadline, he would not file in that district.
Is there any,
Is that a real possibility? Absolutely.
it is. Is there any pre-work, any kind of groundwork you guys could do in that regard? Based on, because I know the census data has to come out and,
We have done as much groundwork as we possibly
Okay.
can. We are working with the Bluegrass Ag District for redoing our maps. They have the GSI technology at the end of the day that I don't. And quite frankly, we're already overworking Robert to death. Robert can't stop to make me another map. It's not his fault. It's that we're asking over and beyond from him. So we're going in a forward motion in the right direction, but we can't do any of it until we get the state data that draws the state lines. Then we can draw our county lines. Then we can submit it to the state. Then they can say our state lines are wrong, and so on and so forth. So it's a give and take process.
When will you submit this to the Board of Elections for approval? Your
I'm going to
Thoughts?
try to be first. Now, there's some theory and thought behind that. I want to be first to see if we're doing what the board is expecting.
so when might that be? Just
I hope to be in front of them. I won't do anything until after all conventions are over, until everybody has gotten through their summer period. But I look to be in front of them before October.
okay.
Is there a good balance? We got 40,000 registered voters in Franklin County out of a population of 50,000. We know that 80% of the population is not even eligible to vote.
Right.
So we still have, would there be any kind of bias toward maybe, is there a precinct that may have more people who are still on the books that don't really vote? Or I know that,
Absolutely.
so does that make it unfair when you start redistricting? How do you look at, do you
That's a
look
good
at
point.
plain old register? What if JW's got a big turnout? People are moving through his district and
Well, Hickory Hills and
Yeah.
Fairview
right.
have an enormous amount of transient voters. Transient voters are voters that have shown up, they have voted here for one term for one reason or the other, and then they've moved on and they haven't come off the rolls. But it hadn't been 2 federal cycles, so the State Board of Elections has not removed them. I can't remove them.
I went to neighborhoods where I knocked on 2 doors because that's the only registered voters in the neighborhood.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
How do you get somebody removed from a voter list that is not?
At this point, I can't judge. If they haven't deceased, if they're not deceased, all I can do is send something over to the State Board of Elections. If they choose to remove them, they remove them. If they don't, there's nothing I can do about it. I cannot remove, you don't want me to have the responsibility to go in and start removing voters. You really don't.
And quite honestly, I think one of my sons is still on the ballot because he's getting stuff, or on the registry, and he had lived in Franklin County in 10 years.
Right.
And so I wonder how I can get him off.
Yeah, is there something that he could send in to be removed?
He can.
The voter can.
What would he have to send in? What would
He
someone?
would send something directly to the Board of Elections that I know where's he live at now, Judge?
Austin, Texas.
That I live in Austin, Texas. I've no longer resided in the state of Kentucky, and that I would like to be removed from your voter rolls. He sends that to State Board of Elections, he'll come off the next day.
But that's the only way to do it.
Yes.
That's a shame.
Wow.
So I'd have to get you whatever that address is and all that. I'll probably do that.
Yeah, you can have so
But
many voters who'll never do
there's
that.
been such
You can have
contention.
so many voters who would never do that. They would leave.
Well, it's difficult to do.
Yeah.
Who do that?
It's not
It's
easy.
an-
It's
it's
not
an
in the
onerous-
bush.
I
An
know that.
onerous process.
There's been such contention on cleaning up voter rolls that, I mean, it's scary to think
It's been bad.
what we would end up in
Yeah.
if we started trying to remove somebody from our voter rolls.
And I understand that, but if somebody personally
Yeah.
told you, I would think that would be at least a legit and signed a note that said, yes, I want you to do this on the next day. But you're right, I
A lot of responsibility.
completely understand, because I think we've seen other states that have gone in and done that arbitrarily or whatever, or capriciously, and then that doesn't work out very well. That causes a lot of consternation.
So you could have more registered voters in the county than you have the actual population. That could happen because there's a lot of turnover, cranking them through.
You could,
I
Franklin
mean, we're
County
close,
doesn't,
we're 40,000 to 50.
Yeah.
Franklin County doesn't have that much turnover and that much transit. If we had a big college though,
Yeah.
if the,
Yeah.
if the University of Kentucky were here, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, and if we were a town, Rowan County, Morehead State University, 22,000 registered students, but a town of 16,000, I bet their voter rolls are never close to being right. So,
Good deal.
Well, Jeff, thank you. Appreciate it. If there are no other questions,
Appreciate it.
we'll adjourn. Are there any other questions, any other discussion?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Everybody in favor to adjourn?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
we are
Yep.
adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Jeff, Ross, thank you all. Thank you,
Thank you.
staff.
Thank you very much for
Jeff,
coming.
Megan,
Yep.
Jeff and Megan, and Russ.